So I'd like to welcome Amy and Choe, officers from Worthing Adur Council, who I'm really, really grateful have given up their weekend to present to us today, and Francesca from the sustainability team. So thank you. Also to Mary, who's a Climate Assembly member, a member of the public who participated in the Climate Assembly. Before I hand over to Amy, who's going to start presenting today, I'd like to say that I've been really fortunate enough to work with Worthing Adur Council's sustainability team. They're a really professional, a really passionate and highly driven team of officers. Not only did they run the climate conference just at the beginning of lockdown 1, but they managed to organise and run a climate assembly during a pandemic. That was quite an achievement, so they're to be highly commended. They also last year won a CPRE, a Countryside Protection for Rural England Gold Award, which, yeah, was well deserved. And a very brief message from the South East Climate Alliance, of which I'm one of the founding members. So it's a collaboration of faith, environmental and community groups across the South East of England. We have about 100 member groups now. Sally said of Worthing Adur Council, they're amongst the top 2 or 3 innovative councils on climate action that they've come across in the South East Climate Alliance, who have been carrying out surveys of councils throughout Kent, Surrey, Sussex and Hampshire. So without further ado, I really, really look forward to hearing from Amy, Choe, Mary, maybe Francesca at the end, about their findings. Over to you.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome, Carrie, and thank you for everybody with your interest today in hearing about the Adur and Worthing Climate Assembly. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to be doing a bit about the introduction of the Climate Assembly, how it came about, the structure of it, and a bit about the question that we asked Assembly members to deliberate. And then I'll be passing over to Mary, who will be talking from her perspective of having taken part in the Assembly, what it was like for her, what she learned, and then what the recommendations were that the Assembly members themselves deliberated and put forward. So the Climate Assembly came out from the climate emergency that was declared in 2019 by the councils. And one of the actions we firmly committed to was to hold a Climate Assembly, bringing together people from across the district and borough, from a range of different backgrounds, to come together, learn, deliberate, and consider what we should collectively do as a council and as a place to respond to the climate emergency that we're facing. So the outputs that came from the Assembly members were defined actions and responsibilities that were both for us as a council to take forward, but also for the area and for individuals, what they believed should be happening for us. The question that we asked them to deliberate wasn't a small one, it was very ambitious. The question was, how can we in Adur and Worthing collectively tackle climate change and support our places to thrive? What does this mean for the way we live and our local environment? And although it was a very ambitious question, it was a question that was chosen through much reflection and consideration. And you can hopefully see woven in there both the theme of climate change, but also the theme of thriving communities, of enabling everybody to live a life which is a good life. And we did that in recognition that a lot of the things that lead to climate change, such as poorly insulated homes or a lot of single-use plastic, can be as much a social issue as it can be a climate issue. So we were really deliberate in putting those things together and asking Assembly members to consider both climate justice and climate change and what we should be doing to ensure that our future is secure and safe for everybody. We had 43 residents who followed the process from start to finish, and over 4 months they learnt a whole heap of things around the climate change, all the topics you could think of, and things that I wouldn't have thought of before that would help them to consider how we should be responding to the question at hand. And we're so lucky to have Carrie as one of the speakers, but a wide range of people from in our area and beyond, such as Jonathan Porritt, who was on our first Climate Assembly day there to deliver a talk about the basics of climate change. So a wide range of speakers and some really notable people who were part of it. And those videos can be viewed on the Adur and Worthing Councils YouTube page. So they're a resource that everybody can access. So we got lots of learning in there, and part of the beauty was the demographics of those people who were part of the assembly. So we sent out about 7,000 letters to residents randomly selected across Adur and Worthing. And then from those who responded, we picked people who really reflected the demographics of our area. So a mix of the ages that we see in our place reflected in assembly members, and the gender that we have, the ethnicity, the class, and also importantly, attitudes towards climate change. A great thing about an assembly process is it's not just those who are super keen to in believing that climate change is their number one priority. We had some people who didn't believe at the start that it was actually a thing or that it was important, and having that wide range of views enabled a real deliberation and coming together of different minds to think through differently what we should be doing. We did envisaged that we would be holding the assembly face-to-face in May, June and July, but because of COVID, we took stock and thought, okay, well, part of the great thing about assembly is that physical meeting with people, forming bonds, but we knew that because the climate emergency is not waiting for COVID to be over, we pushed ahead and held the events online over 4 months, and that brought a very different feel with it. Some really good. So for example, being able to have asynchronous and synchronous learning where people could go away and watch videos and read things and reflect by themselves and then come together and learn in one place together. That those resources that we created was a really big benefit of the assembly. But we were also mindful that being online for a whole day might be a challenge for some people. And so we switched things around. Instead of having 6 full days, we had 5 full days, 5 weekends, about 3 weeks apart from each other. And then between each full day Saturday event, people came together in smaller groups. So groups of 3 or 4 or 5 to learn, discuss, create relationships and do a bit more of the thinking in those smaller groups where their voices could be heard, definitely, before coming back to that wider, big, busy day when we were doing lots of work together. And as I said, that the range of experts and topics was really important so that assembly members felt really well informed to be able to choose their recommendations. So we had people speaking from housing, biodiversity, economy, energy, waste, social justice, really great talks that I'd recommend you having a look at and using if you think it would be helpful for yourself to use in any context. So the process itself was recruitment, learning, deliberating, so getting into the meat of what does this mean and what should we do, and then deciding and coming up with the recommendations. We had, because of it being online, some different things that were also really beneficial. So for example, we had a resident artist, Pauline, who was a real climate activist and wanted to give her art skills to be able to attend the days and create some artifacts that people could engage in a different way, kind of less cognitively and more kind of feeling what they and processing that way of things that they'd seen. So the first thing, the footprint, is a bit of art that she created, but then we had other assembly members who created resources, and I think it might still be on Montague Street in Worthing. A climate assembly member asked for access to one of our stands, the notice boards, and she put a range of art that passers-by could look at and see and learn what we were doing. And then we also had our climate cat, Cleo, who you can see the photo there, would regularly be present at the weekends watching all the different speakers. We had lots of different activities that actually, being online, we could be a bit creative of what people could do. So we used Miro, which is a really helpful online tool that some people found quite hard to access. So we gave additional IT support. But it meant that we've got a wide range of resources that we can look back on, and all the thinking that has created the recommendations is there for us to see. So lots and lots of activities that we would be doing on the full day event. And we did things like sending out treats to create that sense of community that sometimes that you'd have on a full day with food and things like that. So for the first couple of ones, we set up people with enough food to be able to fuel their brain as they were thinking, with locally sourced non-plastic packaging. And actually what we found was a really lovely community. And I know that Chloe's going to be talking about the Assembly members coming back together, but there was a real sense of generosity, kindness, links being formed that actually online did work really well. And there you can see a range of the different speakers. So we had Catherine Howe, our Director for Communities, Pauline Corey, who's another local activist, and then Halima Ali, she was another speaker who spoke about climate justice from a young person's perspective. So just to break it down for you quickly, we had 5 main days. The first one was about getting an understanding of the topic of climate change. The second one was really getting into the nitty-gritty of the different topics of biodiversity, what impacts biodiversity being impacted by climate change, what is the role of energy with climate change, kind of high level. And then day 3 was about, well, what do these things mean for an Ada and Worthing context? And so day 3 was a lot more local people speaking, as well as experts by lived experience. So we had a young person who came to speak from his perspective. We had people who had a disability and so could speak about the impact of climate change on them. We had allotment holders who could talk about the changes to nature, but also were a really great resource about what could we do in terms of gardening and micro allotments. So that was what happened on day 3. And then day 4 and day 5 were very much kind of heads down. What are the topics that we need to make recommendations on, and then shaping them up to present back on day 5 the recommendations they felt should be taken forward. I'm just going to whiz through these, but you'll be able to see these slides later, just talking about the impact the Assembly had on participants. So there was a real mix of people meeting those that they normally wouldn't have met, and really feeling inspired to both what they achieved working together and what they could achieve together. I'm just going to pick out a few of them. So really pleased that the majority felt that the information was fair and balanced, that people had opportunities to express their views, they felt included, and actually that the online platform really helped them to feel connected. So that was good, with all the work that we had put into it, that actually the process itself was really a good process for members to engage in the deliberation. It also had an impact on participants and how they felt about the council. And I think that from hearing some people speaking, there was an understanding of the whole range of things that Climate Council does that maybe members didn't have at the start, and a real building of trust from where they started to where it ended about what we're going to do with them. So an Assembly member said, I have a new hope that the council does and will care and act upon things that are important to the residents of the area. It's just really great to hear. And just that shift in 70% thinking that the Assembly would lead to positive change, that's shifting to nearly 90%. 58% thinking that the council would act on what came out, shifting to almost over 3/4 of participants. And then most importantly, I think, just that sense, most importantly from kind of a council's perspective, that 33% thought that we listened to residents, that shifting, doubling over the process for them to understand that we do listen to residents, especially on this topic. So we had quite a lot of learning. We also had some participants, one who was studying a master's in sustainability. So everyone came from a range of backgrounds and understanding, but 24 participants felt that the most important thing from taking part was that knowledge they gained to be able to be more knowledgeable about climate change. And 37 participants out of the 43 have chosen to continue working with us as we work up what these recommendations means for us. And encouragingly, just that increase in people feeling more confident talking about the topic, and more people feeling they want to get involved in taking action to tackle climate change. So that's what I've got to share about the process. I'm now going to hand over to Mary, and I think I'll stop sharing so you can see her face. But yeah, thank you for listening to me, and I hope that was a useful introduction to the Climate Assembly.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mary Frankland, and I am one of the 43 local residents that took part in the Climate Assembly for Ada and Worthing. I found it a really positive experience. I met lots of people from across the area and learned a lot about what communities and organisations are already doing locally, nationally and internationally. Amy's talked a bit already about the virtual assembly, and from my point of view, and I'm speaking from a personal perspective here, it had its pluses and minuses. I think it did make it more accessible for some people who may have found it more difficult to travel and interact with people face to face. And it did mean that we could include lots of experts, which you probably couldn't have done in a face-to-face environment. So you had all the videos that you could watch in between. On a personal level, I found it more difficult to interact and build lasting connections with the other members. And we haven't been able to meet face-to-face yet, although hopefully in the next few months that might be a possibility, which for me will be a plus. We had 5 sessions, 4 weeks apart, 5 hours a day with breaks on Zoom, which was new to quite a few people, but I think we coped really well. We had really good IT support on hand. We had access to lots of experts who had areas of expertise across a whole range of climate change topics, some of which we may not even have thought of before. And some of them were on hand during the actual sessions to answer any questions and clarify points as we started to work towards forming the recommendations. And it was really fascinating to get all that information and to start to get to grips with sort of quite out there ideas and in managing what the possibilities that you could actually achieve locally. It was a bit overwhelming at first because there was so much information and such a lot to consider. And you kind of were thinking, can we really actually bring all this down into, you know, a manageable sort of recommendation at any point? But with the help and support of the council officials and the Democratic Society, they were able to keep us on track and sort of channel us when we started to get a bit too innovative and into things that were to be realistic, really. A behaviour change is complex, and combating the climate emergency certainly involves behaviour change. Even for those of us who are aware and conscious of the changes we need to make, find it hard. I love my car. I love new clothes. But what this experience really helped me with was to realise that although strategy, vision, communication, all these things are key, that small steps are better than no steps at all. And I think that's a really important message personally that I took away from the assembly, and that I can communicate to people within my own family and social circle, that it doesn't matter how small the step is, it's still an important one. And one of my small steps is to try and set up a community garden on the small development where I live. I'll need to contact the management company and hopefully get them to provide some raised beds, and then get the rest of the residents on board and grow a bit of food, some pollinators. We've all got really small gardens on this estate, so I just feel that would be a really small step for me, but you know, just showing how those small steps can help your community. The other really surprising thing I learned was how much was going on in Ada and Worthing already that I didn't know about. And so and when we get down to looking at the recommendations, one of those is definitely about education, because just like I've just seen all the work you're doing around Horsham, I've got a daughter who lives in Pease Pottage, and I had no idea all this was going on so locally to her, and I don't suppose she does either. So this is really fascinating to me, that all this stuff is going on around the country that most of us don't know anything about it. So this is one reason why I'm really pleased to be doing this kind of thing, because I feel that that's getting the word, spreading the word out. I feel the experience has helped me focus on what I can do, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of the issues that you see on TV and hearing on the news. You know, David Attenborough is wonderful, but he makes me feel a bit useless because I can't help, you know, makes me feel like I can't help all those things that you see there. So this is a really positive way of doing my bit. As an assembly, we came from various places with various amounts of knowledge, concern and involvement, and we spent a lot of time negotiating with each other, asking questions and crafting the recommendations, getting the wording right, and then when we were reasonably happy, putting them to the vote so that the majority were happy and in agreement. We came up with 18 in the end, and broadly they fitted under 6 themes. Lots of them overlapped, obviously, but we got them under 6 themes, and they were brought forward and presented to the council. Obviously, it would take a long time to go through all 18 of them, but we have got a quick overview of them here, and they under the 6 themes. So I'll just run through those. I think, yes, Chloe's going to share, or Amy's going to share the screen so that you can just scroll through them. So theme 1 was biodiversity and green spaces. This was a very important theme for everyone and includes support for kelp restoration. We live by the sea, so we have a kelp farm. Rewilding green spaces and increasing local community food growing. Theme 2 is information and education. Really important one. We would like to see easily accessed sources of information and places of excellence where learning about key sustainability issues can take place. Green finance and energy. These recommendations aim to ensure green energy schemes are available and affordable. That was particularly important to everyone in Ada and Worthing. Planning, and this is the one that kind of most of this stuff comes under and overlaps with. We felt really strongly that the planning system needed to support the highest levels of biodiversity and sustainability. Transport. We want to see active, connected, low carbon transport encouraged and supported. And then finally, waste reduction and recycling. These recommendations look to promote the 5 R's: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover, alongside promotion and ongoing support for initiatives like repair cafes and composting, etc. So that, as you can see, when you on the slides there, there's lots to be getting on with, and I think we were really pleased and proud of what we achieved. I think it's quite a task to get 43 people to broadly agree with a set of recommendations. So I think we did a good job, and we're really looking forward to the next steps and working with the council to take it all forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. It's really great to have you here today. So I'm Chloe Clark, and I'm the Sustainability Officer at Ada and Worthing Councils. So Amy's done an absolutely fantastic job of delivering the Climate Assembly, but it's now she's passing the baton over to me to work with others to deliver the recommendations. So I wondered if an online assembly might lack that celebratory finish that you get from an in-person event, but I definitely felt it ended on a real high. It was absolutely fascinating process to watch unfold. I have to be honest that at the beginning, I wondered how this group of randomly selected people were going to develop this set of recommendations that they all actually agreed on. But that was the magic of the process. For me, it showed how we all work as humans and how different we can be, yet how when guided through a process like this, we can find equity of voice and a consensus. I found the last day of the Climate Assembly pretty powerful. It was really amazing to see how much this process had meant to most of the participants, and for many, they'd been on quite a journey. So firstly, we want to keep hold of that energy and continue the momentum. So we don't want it to stop, because it was really kind of high energy. COVID obviously has put a little bit of a dampener on that with the lockdown straight after, but we're carrying on, we're ploughing on. We really need to be working with the Assembly members and the wider community. The Assembly members felt that where possible, the message to the community needed to be delivered by the community. So this is where they're really key and need to be involved. And it was clear that some of the Assembly members, like Mary was saying, had little awareness of what the councils are doing and what others are already doing. And that feels like it's key to the success of these recommendations, to ensure that the community of Adur and Worthing are more aware of the climate and nature crisis, and they're more aware of what the councils and others are doing, and they're more aware of what they can do. But importantly, we need to ensure that they're supported and feel able to take action if we're going to try and tackle inequalities here. We also want to bring together all the climate and nature work we've got into one climate action plan for Adur and Worthing. But policy and plans are only useful if they actually make things happen. So we must focus on working with others to deliver all of these changes. So we've been busy presenting the Climate Assembly recommendations at various internal meetings across the councils, including the Chief Exec's monthly climate change board, so that as many council staff as possible are aware of them. And it seems to be working. There's been quite a few meetings that I've sat in where the Climate Assembly recommendations are referred to as an impetus for ensuring that an action has to happen swiftly. We're also setting up themed workshops to work through the detail of how the recommendations are going to be delivered. We're setting up staff climate champions group so that we can progress actions internally on all things sustainability focus. We're also championing people and organisations from across the community that are doing great work, like Shoreham Football Club. They recently approached us after we put out our press release about the Climate Assembly. They have signed up to the United Nations Climate and Sports Pledge, and they've been taking all sorts of actions to reduce their environmental impact. But most importantly, they really want to help influence their supporters, the wider local community and other clubs across the area to do the same, which I just think is brilliant. They're just the sort of non-environmental community group that we'd really like to engage with, as they're better placed to have those conversations with the community, and the message will be far better received from them than from us. So 34 out of the 43 Climate Assembly members that took part want to continue being involved. So they're going to be key part of community engagement. They can have the authentic conversations that are needed to help people feel really engaged. We know that the Climate Change Committee has said in their 6th carbon budget that reaching net zero will be pretty much impossible without the actions of individuals. So working with the community climate champions, including the Assembly members, to co-design events and other engagement plans is going to be essential, as will connecting with a wider range of community organisations, businesses, public sector, schools, the big list. In terms of the Climate Assembly, it was such a valuable process to be able to really listen to people's views and understand where people are at. This was a selection of people that represented the community of Adur and Worthing. So I might personally feel anxiety about the scale of the challenge ahead of us, but hearing that some of the members didn't find terms like climate emergency useful, in fact, it turned them off from the conversation, is just a useful reminder about the need for clever communication around climate change. We hope to look into training that might be useful for us and others involved in communicating about the climate in our local community. So we've been doing all sorts of like the usual press releases and updating and simplifying our web pages, sharing content on social media. I've got a weekly blog, but we're also looking at what approach we need to take with communication so that long-lasting change in behaviour is actually achieved. We've suggested to the Assembly members that we meet them twice a year in a kind of formal way to report back on progress of the recommendations And next week, we've got our first meetup with them. So I'm really excited about that we're going to listen to them, hear what they feel we need to be doing next, and find out who wants to be involved in the delivery of the recommendations. Above all, we see the key to all of this is working in collaboration with others to deliver all these key projects. The councils won't always be leading, will often be supporting, facilitating, connecting organisations up so that more can be achieved. So there's actually quite a bit of progress being made already. So I've picked out a few highlights here today, and we'll continually try and communicate about what else has been going on. So like Mary was saying around kelp, there's been ongoing meetings with the Kelp Restoration Partnership and with the Crown Estate about the restoration of a vast underwater kelp forest off the Sussex coast. So the new bylaw, which will see trawling excluded from a really big area of the Sussex coastline, is apparently awaiting imminent approval from the Secretary of State. So we need to watch this space. It's very exciting. Adur and Worthing Council has also been working in partnership with West Sussex County Council and Highways England around changing mowing regimes on the road verges and sowing wildflower seeds. So local community groups are involved in finding volunteers, distributing educational leaflets and taking practical action too. The verges are promoted on the new Wildflower Trail website, which I've put the link in the slides, which is lovely. It's been set up by Green Tides, the local partnership of friends and green space volunteer groups across Adur and Worthing. So having declared a climate emergency in July 2019, the councils are putting their money where their mouth is and have made a commitment to acquire land with a long-term aim to restore ecologically important habitats, to increase biodiversity, mitigate flood risk, boost carbon storage, and ensure the land is there for future generations to enjoy. So since the start of the Climate Assembly, Adur District Council has acquired 2 areas of farmland. One is Pad Farm, it's 45 acres, it's just north of the A27 next to the River Adur, and the other is New Salts Farm, which is just between the Shoreham and Lancing border where that roundabout is just before you go off to the beach. That's 70 acres. And then Worthing Borough Council has acquired land just below Sisbury Ring, which is in the South Downs National Park. That's 100 acres of potential like chalk grassland, Shepherd's Mead. So that's all pretty exciting, I think. One of the recommendations was specifically about publishing our annual carbon audit. So this is now on our website, and we're regularly updating all our sustainability pages with all the latest information and updates around all these recommendations. And one of the recommendations was about utilising Brooklands Park in Worthing, which is just on the coast road between Lancing and Worthing, to act as a centre of excellence to educate and engage residents and schools around key climate and nature themes. So there's a brilliant new partnership project that's just been funded by the Sustainable Communities Fund, which will see a derelict corner of the Brooklands site transformed into a learning wildlife haven with a community garden, orchards, beehives, bug hotels, and an outdoor classroom. My amazing colleagues in the sustainability team have successfully bid for and secured £2.5 million worth of funding for energy improvements to decarbonise council buildings through the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund. This is all going to be saving to the public's purse as well as carbon savings, of course. And they're just about to put in a funding bid for £4 million to develop a Worthing Heat Network scheme to supply large buildings in Worthing Town Centre with zero carbon heat using waste from the sewer. Then on to transport, we've been working with Brighton Hove City Council to extend their hugely successful bike share scheme into Adur and Worthing, offering electric bikes as well as standard pedal cycles for enjoyment and active commuting. That's very exciting. And then finally, we're working with West Sussex County Council to deliver a county-wide electric vehicle charging network that's going to be powered by renewable energy. So we're really proud of the actions that have taken place already across Adur and Worthing. We know there's still a long way to go, but working in collaboration with the community to deliver these recommendations put forward by the Climate Assembly is an absolutely essential part of our work. So thank you for your time today, and I've included some links to our website and also the hashtag that we use across social media to tie all this work together, and our email address if you'd like to get in touch. Thanks. Or should I stop? Oh, you're on mute. Are you on mute? Sorry.
I thought I'd unmuted myself. Thank you so much, Amy, Chloe, Mary. That was just inspirational. I wish I lived in Worthing and Ada.
Oh,
you're doing such brilliant work. Really, really brilliant. So now, actually, if we stop sharing the screen, I'm going to stop recording for the moment. I know we are going to ask questions and so on.